Hello there, friends and sane persons. My name is Kyle, and we're here on Wednesday again. And because it's Wednesday, of course, we are talking about a wonderful board game. Actually, it's Wednesday Whimsy. We don't always talk about a board game, but we always talk about some sort of a board game topic. It could be a top 10, it could be my thoughts on a recently played board game, whatever I happen to feel in the mood for. And this week, we are talking about a board game. I was not lying, I guess, earlier. This is a game that I've been playing quite a lot lately. It recently came out, but it actually came out in, I guess, 2013 was the initial edition, and it was kind of difficult to find and kind of difficult to play and didn't look great. And so a second edition came out, which is what we're talking about today. That game is, pick it up here. We have, got to get that light right. It is Carnival Zombie second edition. Now, honestly, I won't really talk about the differences between Carnival Zombie second edition and first edition. Thematically, they are the same. The way that they work is largely the same. The only thing that's really different is some of the artwork and then some of the components, right? In the original one, these monsters were little cones and pillars, and in the current one, they're minis. That's the biggest difference. But there's also new characters, new events that are going to happen, new endings for your stories, a few new ways to kind of play and experience the game. So it's the one that's available, I guess, now since I have it. So that's what we're going to talk about. Let's start with our review. Let's start with what the game is about. So in Carnival Zombie, it's Carnival. It's in Venice. Venice is floating on a lagoon, as we know. Well, it's on a lagoon, but underneath the lagoon there is a leviathan that is sort of. I guess Venice was built over it, and to keep this thing in place, the stakes of the lagoon of the buildings are keeping this thing down, and it has summoned hordes of zombies to spend the daytime freeing this thing from its confines. And you and your friends represent a team of zombie hunters who are also at the carnival. Look, thematically, it's a little bit weird, but basically you're going to go through 3 days and 3 nights. And at the end of each day, so daytime happens, then at night, you're going to kind of go into survival mode, and you're going to be set upon by hordes of zombies. And if you survive the night, then comes the next day. And during the next day, you're proceeding towards some sort of finale, usually an escape from the city of Venice. A lot of ways to do that. Or you're trying to prep yourself so that you can stay and fight this Leviathan when it wakes up after the third day, or on the evening of the third day. And then at night, you're going to go through that cycle again. You stay up all night fighting zombies. Then the next day you go out. And then after 3 days, you will either have escaped or you will have entered a night without end in which you can no longer win, but you can kind of survive endless waves of zombies as long as you can until, well, you can't anymore. So that's kind of how what the game's about. It's definitely a zombie game, but it's not your typical zombie side type survivor game. You're really working toward a specific goal, or a goal that could be determined as the game goes by. And you're just trying to stay alive for 3 days and then get out of the city of Venice before all kinds of bad things happen. So that's what it's about. Let's talk a little bit about how it works. It's a kind of a complicated game, so we won't be able to get into all of the rules here, but we can talk about it briefly. Basically, let me show you some pictures of it here. The bulk of the game is the nighttime. So let's talk about the nighttime first, and then we'll talk about what happens in day. But at night, you're going to be taking a certain number of, there's a procedure that goes through it, but you're going to be taking a number of these cubes, and these cubes represent different types of zombies. There's big zombies. I guess they're called Goliath zombies. There are Barghest zombies, which are basically dogs that are fast. There are purple zombies that hit hard, and then there are green zombies that are regular shambling zombies. You're going to draw a number of those. It's three. The board is divided into 4 quadrants, north, south, east, and west, and each of those is divided into 2 sections. So you're going to, for each section, you're going to draw 3 zombies out of this abyss bag and place them, and then they're going to activate. They're going to move forward. You're going to have a chance to fight them, and then if you fail to kill them and they're close enough, they're going to attack. In addition to fighting off the zombies, there are also boss zombies. For example, here we have the Doge, and the Doge has some sort of, he's got, he might be faster or stronger. He's got a life stat, so he takes a little bit more damage to kill. And then he's got some sort of special ability that's depicted by a symbol over here. And he's represented on the board by a figure. Let's see, I don't know if I can find the Doge right away, but I can find a zombie to kind of show, if I can get one out. Great broadcasting here as I dig through a box. This here is an example of one of the boss zombies. And these things will move forward and activate their special abilities. And when you kill them, you're usually going to have 2 or 3 a night. So when you kill them, you're going to get a bit of a bonus. And then you're going to repeat this process until you have survived all 4 hours of the night. At the end of the night, all the zombies go away, regardless of where you killed them. Although you do have to make a mad dash out of this shelter that you're in. And any zombies that are in the path that you choose are going to attack you if you're not able to kill them. And then that actually determines the direction you can start your movement in the next day. So you're attacking and you're trying to survive the zombies, and then the night's over. The combat itself is very straightforward. Each character has a weapon or can have more than one weapon, and the weapons are going to do a certain number of shots, and each shot's going to do a certain amount of damage. And there's no die rolling. It's all very deterministic once you get to this point. The order in which the zombies come out is going to be randomized, but after that, it's very, very strategic as you try and plan how best to use your actions to kill the zombies in the right order so that you can keep your refuge safe. There are barricades, and those prevent zombie attacks if zombies happen to make it into this third ring. And that's kind of what you're doing. You're killing the zombies using, working together as a group. You do represent a group of 6 survivors. Each survivor has a special ability. I don't know if they're called survivors. Well, whatever they are, people, characters. They have special abilities, and then they also have a deck of cards that have additional special abilities, sometimes one-time use, sometimes multiple use, that you're going to use to try and improve your chances of surviving the night. There's a sort of a picture of the board. One thing I do like, and it's actually in the rules, is right down here, there's this cute, the rules refer to it actually as a cute baby Leviathan that's included on the board for the sole purpose of reminding you what fate awaits you if you fail to survive. So, and that's kind of how the night works. Now let's talk very briefly about the day. And the day is largely going to use this sort of upper corner of the board, if I can kind of focus in on that. And so you're going to be starting in one of these starting spots. And each of these over here, you see these kind of gold symbols. These are places the game can potentially end. So one way you can end is if you go here to this tower and contact a pilot and then make it up to here, you can be picked up in an airship, and then you'll have a finale that's on the airship that you're trying to survive. Or you can go over to one of these spots and find a boat and call the boat. If you locate the holy hand grenade, that's not what it's called, but the holy bomb, you can fight the great Leviathan at the end of the third day. Or there's a bridge that if you can successfully cross the bridge, you can make it out. And so you have to pick one of these finales to work toward and make sure you're there by the end of the third day, so right before the third night, so that you can enter the finale. If you fail to do so, then you're given a default finale, and the game, it actually says on the rules, who knows if I can find it, but it says there's no way to win this. You have lost the game, but you can continue. A night without dawn, yes. It says, victory conditions, there are none. You cannot win. Play until defeated to achieve bonuses for the next game. You can skip this finale if you'd like. And it's just sort of each finale is sort of described by a sheet of rules. and there are conditions that you have to achieve to get to them. And you can kind of pick as a team which one you want to work toward. And so the daytime is largely going to be spent. You've got 4 hours of daylight, and you're largely going to spend them moving around through the city. Another thing you can do, though, is some of the locations have special actions you can perform, or you can increase your supply of barricades, heal yourself, or most importantly, you can go through this deck of cards that your character has looking for better stuff. And so the day is kind of a very short phase usually, and then the night is really where the bulk of the gameplay goes. But anyway, if you make it to the end of the third night and you're in one of the finale spots, you're going to play that finale. It's going to change the setup of the board. Each one has its own set of rules, its own victory conditions. And if you're successful, you win the game. If not, well, then you fail to win the game, which is often referred to as losing it. That's kind of really what the game is. It's not a complicated concept. I will say the rules are, we'll talk about them in a moment when we get into some of the positives and negatives of the game, but the rules can get a little convoluted for a game as simple as it is. But there is one important concept that I do need to talk about, and that is what is referred to as the corpse pile. And let me show, well, I'll show this one first. So whenever you kill these zombies, the cubes, instead of putting them back in this abyss bag, you're going to drop them. You've got a little cardboard template. There's a bunch of different shapes for it, but mostly it's this kind of tombstone shape. And you're going to drop them on there. You can drop them from just, a tiny little bit above them, but you can't place them directly on. And they're just going to kind of gradually pile up. And every time you drop them, any that fall onto the table are going to do you damage and then go straight back into the fray. So it's this odd dexterity element in the middle of a fairly serious zombie game, but it's actually one of the defining characteristics of the game. It's something you really can't talk about the game without kind of thinking about here. Oops, I didn't want to zoom in that much. So as the game goes on, your corpse pile is going to end up getting rather full, and you're kind of like, oh, I have to keep killing these things, but every time I kill them, I'm making things worse for myself. It's a really interesting mechanism that, it's a very odd thing to have, but it works pretty well. Anyway, so that's kind of the last piece of kind of rules and gameplay I'd need to talk about. Let's get into kind of what makes the game special and what's a little bit less desirable about it. So what makes the game special? The first thing I will say is that there are really tight decisions in this game. Everything you do, since there's so little randomness other than what color cubes are appearing in each space, everything you do is going to be it's going to have a huge impact on the game. You're really going to feel like you don't have enough time, but you also feel like you're strong enough to handle these things because these characters they have pretty good weapons. They don't start with a slingshot and a trash can lid. They start with big guns that can shoot a lot of zombies and do a lot of damage. Now, there's bad stuff that'll make it difficult, right? I mean, it's not a cakewalk, but you're definitely going to survive the first 2 nights. That's kind of a foregone conclusion. I guess not, but but it's really, you expect to do that. It's rare that you just sort of die on the first night because you are characters who can handle this stuff. But the bad guys just keep coming, and they keeps getting more of them, and they keep falling off that corpse pile. So you don't feel like it's an easy game by any means, but you do feel like you have a chance, and every decision you make is really going to influence where you end up in the game. Another thing I will say is that the solo mode is pretty good. Now, I say pretty good. I'm going to talk about this in kind of the negative section, but you can play it solo. You've just got to control 6 characters. Now, the new edition comes with a Path of the Righteous mode. I haven't tried that yet, so I really can't speak to it. I don't know what it's the Path of something. And if you play that, you're playing just one character, apparently. And I'm really interested to try that. But as a solo game, you can play it. It's also a really good cooperative game because of all the tight decisions. It's easy to kind of, you give everybody a couple of characters and you're really working together. It's like, okay, on my turn, I've got to get this. I've got to be over here and do this. And so you have a special ability. Is there anything you can use to help me to be able to do that? Really, really a lot of good cooperation that happens. The story itself is also very interesting. Look, there's not a lot of story, but there's enough. You're having this kind of epic adventure where you're going to pick one of these epic conclusions that you're going to go for and just go for it. And all of this story, the game refers to it as a campaign, but it's a 90-minute play session, right? It's not like you play this one and then play another one and play another one. No, the campaign is just a game. But if that's too much for you and you really just want to play the finale, you can set up all of the finales and play them as a single play session, right? As a one-off play session, and skip the whole I'm going to play through the days kind of thing. Like, I guess if you only had an hour or half an hour, whatever, you can do that, which kind of adds a lot of flexibility to the game. The second edition came with an expansion with some more scenarios too, and I haven't gotten into those yet, but I'm looking forward to doing it. Another kind of really special thing is that corpse pile. I can't tell you how satisfying that is. It has the ability to create dread, but it also, you just sort of feel a sigh of relief when you drop the 3 cubes on there and everything somehow stays in place. But you can also, it's not super punishing if you fail, because you really only take 1 damage, but then you've got a whole lot more zombies. But as long as they're not the fast ones, you might have enough time that they're not going to be an issue for you. It's well balanced to work with the game. And it's also kind of funny that depending on the location you're in, you've got a bunch of different shapes that you can use if you'd like, which, one of them's like this board with a bunch of holes in it. So stuff's definitely going to fall through. A lot of fun things that you can try to kind of make that corpse pile a little bit more magical, but it really works, right? That's the thing people remember about the game. It's the zombie game with the weird dexterity element, but it's just something that is so memorable and so fun in a fairly serious game that it's really, really very special. I do like that there's very little randomness. I like that the characters kind of feel unique. They feel like they have backstories. I don't know if they do, but they feel like they probably should. Actually, they do on the back of their sheets. I think they have one. I just haven't read them yet. So yeah, there's a lot kind of to make the games feel special, and it really, another thing that I don't know how to call this, but it just does not feel like any other zombie game out there. It doesn't feel like any game out there, right? It has its own thematic setting, and it really digs into that. It doubles down on that thematic setting, and I think that works. So that's kind of what makes the game pretty special, in my opinion. Let's talk about some things. Where's the but? What's what's wrong with this game? The first thing, and the very most important thing about it, is the rules. The rules are a real rough ride, and there's nothing wrong with them. It's not like there's a deficiency or they're poorly organized. It's just that the organization doesn't make a lot of sense. You've got this, like, the first 20 pages of this very thick rule book are just dedicated to, like, explaining a lot of thematic stuff and, explaining some components, but it's just, it goes through a lot of things in too much detail and then leaves out some detail on some things that you really need. There are lots of good examples, and the type's nice and big, and there's a lot of pictures and good references, and the game does come with some nice reference cards that'll walk you through everything. But the rules themselves, just picking them up and reading them and learning to play from them is kind of rough. And when you get into the scenarios themselves, they're even more rough, because the scenario rules, I think they're just all on one page, and you're trying to kind of figure it out and make some calls on the fly. So those are the finale rules. It's not a huge negative, but it's definitely the first thing that you're going to notice when you start playing this game. Another thing that's related to that is, although the rules, I said they're kind of poorly organized, they are on so many different sheets. you've got to keep track of all of these different one-page sheets. So all of the character rules are on this one. And then each scenario has its own sheet. And then some of the characters are not on that main sheet. They're from the expansion, and so they're on a separate sheet, but they're not all on one sheet. And you've just got to keep track of so many individual pieces of paper. Each scenario has its own requirements. And so you've got to keep track of what those requirements are. And they're not written down anywhere where it's easy to find them and keep them in place. No, you've got to kind of go through the stack and pull out the right scenario sheet. And then if you find that you can't get to that scenario for some reason, you've got to put it away and then hurry and scramble to find the next one. It's just, there's so many individual pieces of cardstock on the board, and it's already a pretty big game, and there's a lot going on. It's just the organization of all of this is a little bit frenetic, I guess I would say. Another thing that's kind of a negative for me, I mentioned it earlier, is that you always have to play 6 characters unless you try that Path of the Righteous or whatever true solo mode, which apparently you don't have to. But playing with 6 characters as a single player is a lot. I just wish there were a way to eliminate a couple of them and look, you want all their special abilities, but if there were a way to give somebody extra actions and take away, I don't know, some sort of balancing. It was my big problem with Zombicide, for example, is that you always have all the scenarios are for 6 characters. I want to play as a solo player, just one or two, and not have to do a whole lot of management. And because each character has its own deck, and you've got their character sheets and then all the different cards, there's just a lot of stuff on the table, and it's a lot to manage as a single player. Now, if you play with a group, as long as that group as long as 6 is divisible by the number of players you have, then you're fine. But if you're playing with 4 or 5 players, then somebody's controlling a different number, and then there's a shared character. It doesn't work very well. It's kind of messy. Another thing, and this is actually a usability problem, is that on the character sheets, their special abilities are described by pictures and a couple of keywords. And those keywords are not things that are going to make sense. So you're always going to have to be going to this sheet and reviewing what each character's special ability does. And as I mentioned earlier, there's 3 of them that are not on here, but they are on a different set of sheets. Like they're on 3 separate sheets or 2 in 1. It's just kind of it's a mess to kind of deal with that. Same with the bosses. The boss keywords, they don't have keywords, they just have symbols. And so you're always going to have to be reviewing this sheet or the other 2 sheets that the bosses are on, or however many there are, to sort of manage how the characters work. And I really wish maybe that was done probably for, I don't know, to make it easier to produce international editions. But I really wish that there's enough space on the cards to write things out with words, or at least a summary. And I really wish that were the case, so that you just don't have to keep going through a pile of paper to find the information that you need. So, I think you'll find that all of my issues with this game are more usability issues, not necessarily gameplay issues. I think the gameplay is pretty fantastic. In fact, if we go now to my final rating, this is easily a 9 out of 10. Carnival Zombie First Edition was one of my favorite games. When it came out, I just was really taken by it. And this game keeps all of the love, everything you loved from Carnival Zombie, and makes it better. You've got minis instead of stupid cones. You've got minis instead of standees. You've got more options for the finales and things. It's more of what you wanted from original Carnival Zombie. It's also available, or will soon be available, because mine came from a Kickstarter, which was on Kickstarter like 3 or 4 years ago. It took a long time to show up. But I really like Carnival Zombie. I will say, though, although I really like it, I can tell a lot of people that it's not going to be for. If you're looking for a big Zombicide style minis game, this is not for you. If you hate cooperative games, hey, not for you. If you want, I don't know, lots of dice-based, exciting stand-up moments, not for you. This game is very, very somber and serious in how it approaches everything, and then it has a little bit of randomness in that wild corpse pile. So I'll say that it's not for everybody. It's probably only for people who really, if the way that I've described some of the mechanisms as a horror survival game with very little randomness and a lot of control and tight decisions, if that sounds good to you, hey, this might be one that you want. If you love Venice or you love Carnival, maybe. I don't know. But it definitely fills a space in my game collection, one that I can't ever see myself not wanting to play it. I can see myself not wanting to play it with certain player counts or certain players, but it's one that I have been really enjoying lately. And it's a game that it may take 90 minutes, but it makes those 90 minutes just fly by. And you just always feel engaged. And it's one that I highly recommend at least trying. Don't run out and buy it unless you're just confident that it's going to be for you, though. But it's definitely a 9 out of 10 for me, and one that I'll hopefully be coming back to for years and years. Now, I would love another expansion with more stuff and maybe a better rule book and some of these component usability type issues. I'd love if those were fixed. But as it is, I still really love the game and highly recommend it. That is Carnival Zombie, and that takes us to the end of another episode of Wednesday Whimsy. I've had a great time talking to you about a great game. We'll see you all next week for more of the same, and I wish you safe travels and courage when you need it. Bye-bye.